Aloha, and welcome to this week's video. This week's actually kind of fun. This is the first Tongan War Club that I've made. So this is a cow. I think I'm pronouncing that right. There's a lot of different styles of Tongan War Clubs. I picked this style specifically. I did it for a couple of reasons. One, it's actually a little bit smaller style. Most Tongan War Clubs that I researched tend to be two-handed clubs, large clubs, and I just didn't have a large enough piece of koa that I could use for this first piece. And then the other reason why I picked that style is it's a little bit simpler of a design. A lot of Hawaiian weapons don't tend to have too many intricate carvings on them. They tend to let the wood and the grain tell the story of the piece. I'm not very good at those intricate designs, and Tongan clubs generally have really intricate hand carvings on them. And so I picked a little bit simpler design for this combination piece, and then I shrunk it down just a little bit, just to be a little bit more of a combination piece between the Hawaiian koa wood and the Tongan War Club. I'm really excited to work on this. This is the first weapon I've made that has a Tongan influence. So I've made Fijian designs. I've made obviously lots of Hawaiian, some from Aotearoa or New Zealand, and Native American, Aztec, Mayan. So I've made quite a few different varying designs. This is the first one from Tonga, so I'm really excited about that. So I'm just kind of cleaning up the edges here. I could do this with the angle grinder, but it takes off too much, and I wanted to go a little bit slower at evening up those sides. I just wrapped some 100 grit or 150 grit on my metal file. And then one of the things that I kind of was trying to figure out is I wanted to add a little bit of design work to it. I wasn't sure what to do. I ended up taking a little bit of inspiration from a previous piece of mine, and you'll see that here in just a little bit. But I wanted to give it just a little bit more something. It was the design is simple, but I wanted it to have just a little bit more. One thing that's kind of hard to tell from this angle is that I am putting in a center edge all the way down both sides to about where the handle is. You can kind of see it from here. You can definitely see it from the top, but that it does have a center edge on both sides. And then what I ended up going with is putting in these lines that wrap around, and I went with 3 lines. This is actually a similar design that I found on Maori weapons, specifically the patu that I've worked on before. But I felt like it really accented the handle work that I had on here, and so I thought that'd make for a good finishing touch. How I'm putting these in is, rather than using the Dremel, is I'm hand cutting these in with the metal file. What I'll end up doing is, once I get them all roughed in with the metal file, is I'll go back and clean them up with some sandpaper. But I put them in fairly deep, and I did that because I still had quite a bit of material to remove on the overall piece. You can still see where there's marker. The edges aren't smooth, and so I'm going to be removing quite a bit of koa, quite a bit of wood, and so I made sure to make these grooves very deep so that as I removed material from sanding, I wouldn't have to come back in and make them deeper, just clean them up a little bit. I'm sure there's a better method for what I'm doing. What I ended up doing is I did one side at a time. So there's, on the wood, because it's not round yet, there's 4 sides. I just worked my way around until I eventually connected them. And then once I got them to a decent spot, I brought them back to my table. I noticed there was a couple things I didn't like, so I cleaned that up just a little bit more. And then from here, it's just going to be going on to cleaning up the pommel side, the inside of the club. This specific design actually had more of a cylindrical end. There were other designs though that had an end that would flail out like this. I kind of like that better, especially since this wasn't going to be a two-handed club. It's largely, I mean, you could hold it with 2 hands, but I designed it to be a single-handed club. And so I wanted to add just a little bit more weight to the back, as well as flailing it out, so when you handled it, its balance was a little bit better, and it wouldn't fly out on a heavy swing. So I'm just using my chisel here to clean this up. I first roughed in this groove with my angle grinder. I didn't want to take it too far with the angle grinder because I've gotten pretty decent with it, but at the same time you can only do so much fine tuning on an angle grinder. So I got ahead and pulled out my, I think I'm using my 3/4 inch chisel here, 1/2 inch chisel, I can't remember. And I'm just cleaning it up to a point where I can start sanding it. The real thing that I wanted to make sure is that both sides were even from front to back. Once I got those even from there, I was pretty confident just getting doing the rest of it with the disc sander. I was really nervous with this piece. I'm always nervous when I start a piece with a design that is either unfamiliar or from a culture that I haven't studied a lot about. So I do know a little bit about Tonga, but I'm very unfamiliar, and so I was a little bit nervous with the overall construction of the piece. I really wanted to make sure and capture the historic image that I had. I didn't want to put too much of my own influences in it. I wanted to keep most of it as true as I could. Obviously, in everything that I do, I have a little bit of my influences in it, but for the most part, I wanted it to be pretty much there. The rest of this is just sanding. Started at 150 and worked my way down to 320. I thought about taking it to 400, but it's a club. I kind of liked it being a little bit more rough. I did sand it all the way around, so it is clean, but yeah, I didn't take it to 400 or 1,000 grit or anything like that. I was really excited to oil this up. So the wood here, you can really see it now that it's oiling, is a compression curl. So you can see how the grain is wavy. It's not a straight grain. And so the curl, it probably has some natural curl as well, but the majority of the curl is present as a result of the wood that actually got compressed from where this koa came from. So it probably was next to a root or next to a heavy branch. But man, that compression curl just made for an absolutely beautiful grain. The curl on this piece was just gorgeous. This is by far my favorite part. I love watching the grain come out. Koa wood is just an amazing wood. It's not the only wood that has curl, but man, it's definitely my favorite, my personal favorite. It also has a good weight to it. It's not too it is a hardwood, so it's dense, but it's not so heavy that it's unwieldy. It just feels good in the hand. So I really like using it for making the Hawaiian weapons and other style weapons. Getting a little bit of kind of an idea here. I will put some final finishes on it, but I just kind of wanted to show the grain. So it looks like right there is where that tree branch, I think this was what came from a tree branch. So this piece here probably came from there, or a branch, a heavy branch that compressed in. Here's the finished piece. You can kind of see the ridge line there, how it reflects on the light. I was really happy with it. It was a beautiful piece. Obviously, I have to test it out. So let's take a look at that testing. Ready? Ready?
Yes. Eat the melon! Eat the melon! Don't! I'm behind the rock wall.
Ready?
Yes. Okay. Try not to slice me.
Oh.
Crouch. Time will give her strong.
Hope you enjoyed the video. This was after testing. Took 0 damage. It was absolutely amazing. It was a ton of fun. I didn't test it on the ballistics gel because blunt force doesn't really do much to ballistics gel, so it's kind of boring. Mahalo for watching, and I'll see you next time.